The gate didn't creak. That's the thing nobody tells you about prison. The doors that ruin your life don't make a sound worth remembering. They just click, quiet as a light switch, and suddenly you're a free man standing in the rain with nothing but a folded release form and a grudge the size of a warehouse. I'm Clifford Wolfe, 71 years old. For 730 days I answered to a number instead of a name, because my own son stood in front of a judge and swore under oath that I'd shoved his pregnant wife down a flight of stairs. I never touched her. By the end of this, one of us was going to lose everything. I just didn't know yet that it wouldn't be me. They were waiting outside the gate, Bradley in a suit that cost more than a used car, Kayla holding a baby wrapped in gray fleece like a prop from a catalog shoot. Behind them, 3 photographers I hadn't invited were already clicking away. Dad. Bradley opened his arms like we were in a commercial. Welcome home. I didn't move, smile, he said through his teeth, close enough that only I could hear it. The board's watching the coverage. You want to be homeless and embarrassing? Kayla stepped up next, tilting the baby toward me like she was handing me a receipt. This is Owen. He's been dying to meet his grandfather. He's 3 months old, I thought. He's not dying to meet anybody. He's hungry, and he wants a nap. He's the only honest person here. I looked at her, really looked, past the makeup, and I walked around her like she was a mailbox on the sidewalk. The cameras loved it. Bradley grabbed my sleeve. I looked down at his hand until he let go. Then I kept walking toward a rusted Buick where a man in a raincoat was holding an umbrella he wasn't using on himself. You're going to regret this, Bradley shouted after me, all the polish gone out of his voice now. The house is mine. The company is mine. You've got nothing. I got in Nathaniel's car. The seat smelled like coffee and 40 years of friendship. You look like hell, Nathaniel said. I feel incredible, I said, and for once, that wasn't a lie I was telling myself to get through the day. Welcome back to Sweet Family Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. You're going to love it here. And while you're down there, tell me your city. I want to know who's riding with Clifford tonight. Nathaniel didn't take me home. There was no home to take me to. The deed to the German village house I'd lived in for 30 years had my son's name on it now, and I wasn't in the mood to ask permission to sleep in my own guest room. There's a place on South High, Nathaniel said. Excelsior Motel. It's not the Ritz. I've slept in worse, I said. I just got out of it. The room smelled like carpet cleaner and cigarettes somebody had smoked a decade before the no smoking sign went up. I sat on the edge of a bed that dipped in the middle, and Nathaniel spread the folder out across the bedspread like a man laying out a crime scene. I thought I knew exactly how bad it was going to be. I was wrong by about $4 million. The lake house sold 6 months into my sentence for 60 cents on the dollar to a buyer who turned out to be a shell company Bradley controlled. The '67 truck I restored with my own hands, gone to an auction house in Cincinnati. 41% of Wolf Building supply, thank God, still legally mine, the one asset his lawyers hadn't found a way to touch. Sitting untouched, only because Nathaniel had fought a preliminary injunction while I was still in intake at Chillicothe. There's one more thing, Nathaniel said, and something in his voice made me look up. The accountant who signed off on the trust paperwork. A woman named Patty Ruiz. She quit 2 weeks ago. No forwarding address. But before she left, she mailed something to my office. I haven't opened it. Figured that one was yours. I turned the envelope over in my hands. Didn't open it yet. I wasn't ready. Tell me something first, I said. Tell me what actually happened. The night Kayla fell. I want to hear it from somebody who wasn't in the courtroom performing for a jury. Nathaniel sighed and sat down in the room's one chair, the vinyl cracking under him. You'd gone to the house to talk about the merger paperwork, he said. You and Bradley argued in the kitchen. Kayla came down the stairs to referee, like she always did. She was 6 months along. She caught her heel on the runner at the top of the landing, the one you'd told them twice to nail down, and she went down 4 steps before she caught the railing. I remembered that argument. I remembered every word of it. What I didn't remember, until that night in a motel room with a stranger's cigarette smoke still in the walls, was that I'd told them about that runner in July, and they'd never fixed it. She didn't lose the baby that night, I said quietly. It wasn't a question. I already knew. No, Nathaniel said. She lost it 11 days later, at a follow-up appointment, where the doctor found no injury consistent with a fall. Nothing in Kayla's medical record ties the loss to that night at all. But by the time that report came back, Bradley had already called the police, and you'd already been arrested, and the story had already gone out to every camera crew in Franklin County. Once a story like that starts moving, Clifford, the truth doesn't get a vote. I sat with that for a long time. Outside, a truck downshifted on South High Street, and somewhere down the hall a television laughed at a joke I couldn't hear. 2 years, I thought. 2 years for a runner rug I told them to nail down myself. I finally opened the envelope. Inside, 3 bank statements, and a sticky note in handwriting that slanted hard to the right, like whoever wrote it was in a hurry to be somewhere else. He made me do it. Ask about the Cedar Street account. Well, I said, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt something other than rage sit down next to it at the table. Looks like we've got somewhere to start. The Anchor Diner hadn't changed. Same cracked red booths, same bell over the door that never rang quite right. What had changed was the woman behind the counter, Monica Diaz, 34, tired eyes, name tag slightly crooked, pouring coffee like she'd rather be doing anything else in the world. She recognized me before I sat down. That surprised me. "You're Mr. Wolf," she said, setting the cup down without spilling a drop. "You used to tip like the recession never happened." "I used to have money to tip with," I said. She almost smiled. Then she leaned in, voice low. "Your son comes in here sometimes. Him and a guy from the bank. They don't think anybody listens to waitresses." That was the moment I stopped thinking of Monica Diaz as a waitress and started thinking of her as a witness. "What do you hear?" I asked. She glanced toward the kitchen, then back at me. 3 accounts. Company money going somewhere it isn't supposed to. I know numbers well enough to know those don't add up, and I know guilty when a man orders a second drink at 10 in the morning. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Nathaniel, sitting across the booth, had gone very still. "Would you say that in a deposition?" I asked her. "I've got a daughter and a landlord who raises rent every March," Monica said. "I'll say it wherever it pays my bills and doesn't get me fired from a job I already hate." Good, I thought. Honest and hungry. That's who wins wars, not the people with the most money, the people with nothing left to lose. I asked her, carefully. Why a woman sharp enough to catch a man laundering money over pancakes was pouring coffee for tips instead of running a department somewhere. She didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. "I had a job like that once," she said. "Staff accountant for a used car lot on the west side. Found out the owner was skimming from customer down payments. Old people, mostly. Folks trading in a Buick for something they could still drive with bad knees. I reported it. He fired me before the state finished the investigation, and every reference he ever gave me after that made sure nobody else would hire me for the same kind of work. Not exactly a arson booster when you're trying to get another accounting job in the same county." She shrugged like it cost her nothing to say, though I could tell it cost her plenty. Turns out honesty's a great way to end up serving coffee, license and all. I didn't know it yet, but the woman pouring my coffee had already fought this exact war once before, and lost. This time, I intended to make sure she won. "If I told you I could use somebody who already knows how to read a set of cooked books," I said, "and who isn't afraid to say so under oath, would that interest you more than a lunch shift?" Monica looked at me the way you look at a man who might be lying. Or might be crazy. Or might be both. "Depends what it pays," she said. "And whether you're planning on getting me fired from this job too." "You won't need this job when I'm done," I said. She didn't say yes. But she didn't say no, and she topped off my coffee without being asked, which in the world I come from is as close to a handshake as you get. Word travels fast in a town like Columbus, especially when you own a company people used to see your name on every job trailer south of Grove City. 4 days after my release, Bradley got ahead of the story the only way he knew how. He called a reporter himself. I found out about it the way most people find out things now, which is a phone buzzing on a motel nightstand at 7 in the morning. I thought I'd have more time to build my case before he tried to burn me down first. I was wrong, and it nearly worked. The headline read, "Wolf Family Speaks Out. Son Says Father's Mental State Concerning Since Release." I read the quotes twice to make sure I wasn't imagining them. "My father spent 2 years in a very difficult environment," Bradley told the reporter. "We love him. We just want him to get the help he needs before he does something that hurts himself or someone else. We're exploring whether a guardianship might be in his best interest. Guardianship, my own son, on record, laying groundwork to have a judge declare me unfit to run my own company. Unfit, maybe, to run my own life." Nathaniel called before I'd even finished reading it a third time. "He's trying to get ahead of the embezzlement claim before we can file it," he said. No hello. Straight to business the way he always did when something scared him. If he can get a guardianship petition moving and paint you as unstable, a judge might freeze your voting shares before we ever get to present evidence of what he did. Clifford, this isn't posturing anymore. This is a real threat. I sat on the edge of that motel bed with the newspaper in my lap, and for one long moment, I let myself feel exactly how close he'd come to actually winning. 2 years he had to plan this, I thought. 2 years while I had nothing but a cot and my own heartbeat to plan with. He's not stupid. I've been underestimating that his whole life, and it's cost me every time. "What do we need," I said, "to make sure that petition never gets in front of a judge?" "Proof," Nathaniel said. "Real proof, on paper, before he files. Once it's just his word against yours in a courtroom with cameras in it, the story writes itself the way he wants it to. We need Cedar Street. We need it now, not in 3 weeks." I looked at the sticky note still sitting on the nightstand. "Ask about the Cedar Street account." "Then let's go ask," I said. It took Nathaniel and a forensic accountant he trusted 4 days of very unglamorous work, subpoenaed bank records, wire transfer logs, a condo deed in Sarasota registered to an LLC with a name so generic it was practically designed to be forgotten, to trace the full shape of it. Bradley had been moving money out of Wolf Building Supply for the better part of 18 months. Funneled through a Cedar Street holding account and out to a Florida property he'd told the board was a regional sales office. There was no regional sales office. There was a pool, a boat slip, and according to the county records Monica found scrolling through public tax filings on her phone during a slow shift, no sales staff had ever been paid a dime from that address. $320,000, Monica said, sliding her phone across the diner booth toward me, just in the last year. And that's only what's on paper. I'd bet my daughter's college fund there's more they didn't bother hiding as well. I'd waited 2 years behind one set of doors. I could wait a little longer to make sure he heard every single one of those numbers read out loud in front of people who mattered to him. "You could go public with this today," Nathaniel said, back at his office, the folder now 3 times its original size. "Bury him in an afternoon. Kill the guardianship petition before he ever files it." "No," I said. "If I bury him quiet, he still gets to be the son who tragically had to protect the company from his unstable old man. I want the whole building watching when it happens. I want him to hear the doors lock the way I heard mine." "There's a shareholder meeting in 9 days," Nathaniel said slowly, understanding where I was headed. "Annual review. Full board, major investors, press credentialed at the door. Then that's our courtroom," I said. The 9 days before that meeting were the busiest I'd been in 2 years, and I don't just mean busier than prison, I mean busier than I'd been in the decade before I went in. Back when I still believed being busy was the same thing as being in control. Nathaniel built the legal case. Monica, now working evenings out of Nathaniel's spare office instead of the diner, built the financial one, spreadsheet by spreadsheet, wire transfer by wire transfer, until $320,000 became closer to $600,000 once she found a second shell account Bradley's own accountant hadn't flagged. I spent those 9 days doing something harder than either of those jobs. I called board members one by one from a burner phone Nathaniel bought me because my name was still radioactive enough that people hung up on Clifford Wolf before they'd let him finish a sentence. Dennis Farrow, the board chairman, was the hardest call. Clifford, he said when he finally picked up on the fourth try, I have to be honest with you. A lot of us on the board assumed the worst when this all came out. Bradley's been very convincing. I know, I said. I'm not calling to convince you of anything over the phone, Dennis. I'm calling to ask you to reserve judgment for 9 more days and come to that meeting with your eyes open. That's all. If I'm wrong about what I think happened, you'll know it inside the first 10 minutes and you can throw me out yourself. There was a long silence on the line. You built that company out of a gravel lot on Parsons Avenue, Dennis finally said. I was there the day you signed the first bank loan. I've never once, in 30 years, known you to bluff about numbers. Another pause. 9 days, Clifford. I'll keep an open mind. That's the most I can promise. I hung up that phone not knowing if it would be enough. All I knew was that for the first time since the gate opened, somebody who wasn't Nathaniel or Monica had actually listened. If this is your first time here, welcome, and if it's not, you already know the deal. Hit subscribe, drop where you're watching from in the comments. The night before the meeting, Bradley made his last move, and it was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He called me. Not the burner phone, the number he must have gotten from the motel registry, because I hadn't given it to anyone but Nathaniel. Dad, he said, and his voice had changed completely from the man I'd seen at the gate. Soft, almost gentle. I've been thinking. I know things have been ugly. I know I've said things I regret. What if we talked before tomorrow? Just you and me. No lawyers. No board. I could come by. We could figure this out like a family. For about 4 seconds, I almost believed him. That's the part that scares me most, even now. Not that he lied, but that some part of me still wanted so badly for it to be true. What exactly would we be figuring out, Bradley? I asked. I could restructure the accounts, he said, quickly now, the gentleness cracking at the edges. Quietly, nobody at the meeting would need to know any of it. I'd step back from day to day, give you real control again, and this whole ugly chapter just goes away. Owen gets to grow up with a grandfather who isn't dragging the family name through a courtroom on live television. Isn't that worth something to you? There it is, I thought. Not an apology. An offer. He's not sorry. He's negotiating. You know what the difference is between us, Bradley? I said. You've spent your whole life thinking every problem has a price you can negotiate down. I spent 2 years learning that some things you just have to pay for in full. I hung up before he could answer. The annual shareholder meeting was Bradley's idea of a coronation. Chandeliers, an open bar, a slideshow with his face on it more often than the company logo. He stood at the podium telling a ballroom full of investors that Wolf Building Supply had never been stronger. His voice smooth as a man who'd rehearsed the line in a mirror. I walked in through the side door with Nathaniel and Monica, a stack of documents thick enough to stop a bullet under my arm. The room went quiet the way rooms do when they smell blood in the water. Dad, Bradley's smile flickered like a bad bulb. This is a closed event. I own 41% of this company, I said. That makes it my event too. I watched 2 years of rage arrange itself into something almost calm, the kind of calm you only get once in your life, right before you finally get to say the thing you've been rehearsing in the dark. Dennis Farrow stood near the front, arms crossed. Watching, I found his eyes for half a second and gave him one small nod. Eyes open. That's all I asked. I laid it out plainly. No theatrics. The Cedar Street account. The condo with no sales team. The trust he'd signed my assets into while I was still appealing a conviction he'd manufactured out of a rug he never bothered to nail down. Monica's statement, notarized, went up on the same screen that had been showing his face all night. The numbers scrolled past, 300,000, then the second account, 600,000 total, then the deed to the Sarasota condo with Bradley's own signature on the closing documents. This is a smear campaign, Bradley shouted, but his voice had already lost the room. He's unstable. That's why we were exploring guardianship in the first place. You all read the article. Guardianship, I said, filed 4 days after your own reporter called it exploring. 3 days before you knew I'd have proof of $600,000 in missing company funds. That's not concern for my mental health, Bradley. That's timing. Kayla, standing near the back with Owen asleep against her shoulder, wasn't looking at Bradley anymore. She was looking at the exit. "You don't understand," Bradley said, and for one moment the polish cracked all the way through. The voice underneath thin and desperate, the same voice I'd hear again weeks later through a prison phone line. "I was protecting the company from you. You were reckless. You were going to run it into the ground the way you always. I was in prison," I said. For something Kayla's own obstetrician confirmed, in writing, never happened the way you two claimed. There was no injury from that fall. Bradley, you knew that 11 days before you ever called the police, and you called them anyway. The room turned to look at Kayla. She was already moving toward the exit, heels clicking on marble the way they'd clicked on wet concrete outside a prison gate 2 months earlier. Bradley didn't run. He just stood there in front of 200 investors, soaked in silence instead of rain this time, while security, men who'd been calling him sir for 2 years, walked him out of a building, with his own name still on the letterhead, in the folder tucked under his arm. Dennis Farrow was the one who called the vote. 41% from me, another 38% from investors who'd just watched $600,000 scroll across a screen in real numbers, was more than enough. Bradley Wolf was removed as CEO of Wolf Building Supply before the caterers had finished clearing the appetizer trays. I built these walls, I thought, watching the doors close behind him. I never once imagined I'd need to watch them hold against my own blood. 6 weeks after the gate clicked shut behind me, I sat behind my old desk on the 42nd floor, mine again, mahogany again. Signing the paperwork on the Clifford Wolf Legal Fund, $5 million set aside for elderly people getting railroaded by their own families the way I was. Monica sat across from me in a navy suit that fit her like she'd been born wearing it. I'd made her CFO 11 days after. The board raised exactly one eyebrow. Until she was the one who found the third hidden account nobody else had even known to look for. "How's Rosa?" I asked. "Loves the new school," Monica said, smiling in a way that reached all the way up to her eyes. "Asked if you're coming to her soccer game Saturday. She's been telling her whole team her boss brings the good orange slices. Tell her I'm not missing it," I said, "and that I'm bringing the good ones." That Saturday, I stood on the sideline of a scrappy little field behind an elementary school in German Village, holding a plastic bag of orange slices and a folding chair I didn't end up using, because I was too busy shouting at an 8-year-old to get back on defense, "Rosa, back on defense." Monica stood next to me in a windbreaker instead of a suit, laughing so hard at my coaching that she nearly missed her daughter's one and only goal of the season. I'd spent 2 years in a cell believing the only family I had left was the one that put me there. I hadn't known yet that the family I actually needed had been pouring my coffee the whole time. Rosa ran off the field afterward, cleats muddy, grinning wide enough to lose a tooth over it, and hugged me around the waist without asking permission first. "Did you see it?" she said. "Did you see my goal?" "I saw the whole thing," I said. "Best goal I've seen all year." "You didn't watch any other games," she pointed out, which was fair, and which made her mother laugh again. This is what I lost 2 years for, I thought, watching Rosa run back to her team. Not a house, not a company. The intercom on my desk buzzed the following Monday, interrupting a meeting that had otherwise been going well. "Mr. Wolf," my assistant said, her voice hesitant. "There's a collect call. It's Bradley." 2 years ago I'd have answered before she finished the sentence. The man who did that didn't survive Chillicothe. Only the version of me who learned better did. I let it blink twice before I said, "Put him through." Speaker. The line crackled with the sound of a place I knew too well. Steel doors, distant shouting, a phone with a cord too short to give you any privacy at all. He'd been sentenced to 8 years the week before. Embezzlement and falsifying business records, a plea deal that saved him from a longer number only because Nathaniel had quietly declined to push for the maximum. "Dad?" His voice had lost all its polish. "Dad, you gotta help me. The lawyer here is useless. They're saying I might not even get parole review for 6 years. 6 years, Dad. I know what that feels like," I said. "I did 2 of them, for a crime I never committed. I need money for an appeal. At least put something on my commissary account." "The food here is bad," I said. "I know. I ate it for 2 years and lived. Blood is thicker than water, Dad. You always said that. He wasn't wrong. I had said that. For 40 years, believing it like scripture. It took a prison cell to teach me the rest of the sentence nobody bothers finishing. I did say that, I said. But blood can go bad too, Bradley, and when it does, you don't keep the limb because you're attached to it. You cut it off so the rest of you survives. Dad, don't you dare hang up short. Punchy done. I hung up. The silence after wasn't heavy. It was the opposite. The feeling of setting down a pack you've carried so long you forgot your shoulders could feel any other way. You okay? Monica asked from the doorway, where she'd been waiting to walk into the next meeting with me. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. I looked out over Columbus, German village rooftops, the river catching the afternoon light, a city that had watched me lose everything and get it back with interest. They tell you family is everything, I said, that you forgive no matter what. That blood is destiny. They're wrong. Family's not who shares your DNA, it's who stands with you in the rain, and who tells you the truth even when it costs them something. I lost a son who saw me as a bank account with a pulse. I gained people who saw me as a man. Saturday, there was another soccer game. I already knew I was bringing the orange slices. That's a trade I'd make every single time. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories like this.